So welcome to the Sunday reading series. My name is Dean Knight, and today's readings are dedicated to observing the anniversary of Poe's death, which was tomorrow, October 7th of 1849. The museum here, in conjunction with the Baltimore Poe House and Museum, is in the middle of doing a series of events and programs up in Baltimore, centered in the Baltimore Poe House and Museum. And so I'd like to sort of touch on that. Baltimore has his body, and they have one of his houses, but we have a great number of artifacts related to Poe here in the Poe Museum. We're here in his hometown, here in his home neighborhood. We don't have any of the houses that Poe lived in here in Richmond, unfortunately, but we do have a fantastic collection. So those of you who are here, if you haven't yet visited, please spend as much time as you like here. Those of you watching this later, please come and see us if you haven't already. Today I'm going to read three poems. I'd like to start with a poem not by Edgar Allan Poe, but by the great and puzzling, I would say, is a good word for him, French poet Stéphane Mallarmé. Mallarmé has a reputation of being pretty difficult to understand, and that's in English. He might be, I'm not sure if he's more or less easy to understand in French, but in 1876, just after Poe's body was moved from its original burial spot within Westminster Hall Burying Ground to its current location, Mallarmé wrote a poem called The Tomb of Edgar Allan Poe. Mallarmé, along with being a noted French poet, also translated Poe's work, specifically his poetry, into French. And Mallarmé's translations, along with those of Charles Baudelaire, really made Poe a sensation in France. These really made a big impression on French writers and readers. Poe, ever since the 1860s and 70s, has been very big in France, very popular, and has influenced many, many French writers and readers. So this short poem was on the occasion of Poe's body being moved to its current location in 1875. This was written in 1876. The Tomb of Edgar Allan Poe. Changed to himself at last by eternity, with a bare sword the poet has bestirred his age, terrified that it failed to see how death was glorying in that strange word. The spell was drunk, so they proclaimed aloud, as vile freaks writhe when seraphim bestow purer scents on the phrases of the crowd, in some black bruised dishonorable flow. If our idea can carve into bas-relief from hostile clod and cloud, oh struggling grief for the adornment of Poe's dazzling tomb, at least this block, dropped by an occult doom, this calm granite, may limit all the glum, blasphemy flights dispersed in days to come. That is Mallarmé on the Tomb of Edgar Allan Poe. Now I'd like to read Poe's most famous work, The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had tried to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token. and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore. Merely this and nothing more. Then into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon I heard again a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not an instant stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled, this ungainly fowl, to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no sublunary being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Wondering at the stillness broken by replies so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters in its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster. So when hope he would adjure, stern despair returned. Instead of the sweet hope he dared adjure, that sad answer, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by angels whose faint footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Let me quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there, balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Thank you. The last poem I'd like to read is called Ulalume, and I know that's not as familiar as The Raven. One reason I like to read Ulalume at this time of year is because we at the Poe Museum get a lot of people here in October, and a lot of association with Poe and Halloween, and we understand that, and that's fine. We welcome that. But the reality is that Poe lived before Halloween as we know it existed, really. I'm sure that Poe knew something about some of its predecessors, the Celtic celebration of Samhain, for instance. But Ulalume is really the only time which Poe essentially writes sort of a proto-Halloween poem. This poem, as you're about to find out, is dark and mysterious. It's set in October, very late October, maybe Halloween itself. And so when people talk to me about Poe and Halloween, I say, read this poem. And this poem, by the way, is subtitled A Ballad. Poe is always thinking about how his poems will sound when spoken aloud. This one in particular, I think. It's written in an anapestic meter, which is dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, like that, which I hope will come through somewhat in my reading. So here it is, Ulalume, A Ballad. And this is from very late in his life and career, by the way. This is from 1848, and he died in 1849. The skies, they were ashen and sober. The leaves, they were crisped and sere. The leaves, they were withering and sere. It was night in the lonesome October of my most immemorial year. It was hard by the dim lake of Ober, in the misty mid-region of Weir. It was down by the dank tarn of Ober, in the ghoul-haunted woodland of Weir. Here once, through an alley titanic of cypress, I roamed with my soul. Cyprus, with Psyche, my soul. These were days when my heart was volcanic as the scoriac rivers that roll, as the lavas that recklessly roll their sulphurous currents down Yannick and the ultimate climbs of the pole, that groan as they roll down Mount Yannick in the realms of the boreal pole. Our talk had been serious and sober, but our thoughts, they were palsied and sere. Our memories were treacherous and sere. For we knew not the month was October, and we marked not the night of the year. Ah, night of all nights in the year. We noted not the dim lake of Ober, though once we had journeyed down here. Remembered not the dank tarn of Ober, nor the ghoul-haunted woodland of Weir. And now, as the night was senescent, and star dials pointed to morn, as the star dials hinted of morn, at the end of our path a liquescent and nebulous luster was born, out of which a miraculous crescent arose with a duplicate horn, Astartes bediamonded crescent, distinct with its duplicate horn. And I said, she is warmer than Diane. She rolls through an ether of sighs. She revels in a region of sighs. She has seen that the tears are not dry in these cheeks where the worm never dies, and has come past the stars of the lion to point us the path to the skies, to the Lethean peace of the skies. Come up in despite of the lion, to shine on us with her bright eyes. Come up through the lair of the lion, with love in her luminous eyes. But Psyche, uplifting her finger, said, sadly, this star I mistrust. Her pallor I strangely mistrust. Oh, hasten, oh, let us not linger. Oh, fly, let us fly, for we must. In terror she spoke, letting sink her wings till they trailed in the dust. In agony sobbed, letting sink her plumes till they trailed in the dust, till they sorrowfully trailed in the dust. I replied, this is nothing but dreaming. Let us on by this tremulous light. Let us bathe in this crystalline light. Its sibilant splendor is beaming with hope and in beauty tonight. See, it flickers up the sky through the night. Oh, we safely may trust to its gleaming, and be sure it will lead us aright. We safely may trust to a gleaming that cannot but guide us aright, since it flickers up to heaven through the night. Thus I pacified Psyche and kissed her, and tempted her out of her gloom, and conquered her scruples and gloom. And we passed to the end of a vista, but were stopped by the door of a tomb, by the door of a legended tomb. And I said, "What is written, sweet sister, on the door of this legended tomb?" She replied, "Ulalume, Ulalume, 'tis the vault of thy lost Ulalume." Then my heart it grew ashen and sober, as the leaves that were crisped and sere, as the leaves that were withering and sere. And I cried, "It was surely October, on this very night of last year, that I journeyed down here, that I brought a dread burden down here. On this night of all nights in the year, oh, what demon has tempted me here? Well I know now this dim lake of Ober, this misty mid-region of Weir. Well I know now this dank tarn of Ober, in the ghoul-haunted woodland of Weir. Said we then, the two then, can it have been that the woodlandish ghouls, the pitiful, the merciful ghouls, to bar up our way and to ban it, from the secret that lies in these wolds, from the thing that lies hidden in these wolds, have drawn up the spectre of a planet, from the limbo of lunary souls, this sinfully scintillant planet, from the hell of the planetary souls. Thanks, Ulalume. All right. Well, thank you very much. Any questions about any of those poems or anything else at the moment? Yes.
How old was he when this poem was written?
He was 39.
Get out, no. But when did he pass?
40.
Okay, so this could be a really stupid question, but could you explain what the raven means to you? Like, would that be bad?
I don't mind talking about what it means to me a little bit, but of course I think the point is that it should be about what it means to you. The raven to me and to Poe, first of all, is an exercise in tight metrical construction. The raven, Poe is extremely proud of this. He put together these series of stanzas in trochaic octameter, meaning dun 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 like that, 8 times in a row. In the 2nd, 4th, and 5th lines, he pulled out one syllable at the end. He put internal rhymes all through all those stanzas, and I'm sure he was extraordinarily proud of it, like a master mechanic who puts together a Rolls Royce. And then a year after it was published, he writes this very interesting essay in which he sort of pops the hood and shows us exactly how he did it. And he tries to demystify it. He says, "No, I put these sounds together because they sound good together." He's always thinking about what it's going to sound like when it's being read. And he read this poem many, many times, so much that he got sick of it. So he is definitely thinking about performance. He's thinking about sound, including especially with Ulalume. He calls it a ballad, and part of the impetus for writing Ulalume is to write something that will sort of test the voice. As far as the meaning of the raven for me, I would say that I think maybe the biggest question about the raven is about the bird, about the raven, and whether it's supernatural, whether it has any particular knowledge about anything. And I would say for me, no, because for me that would make it sort of out of this world, out of the world of humanity and human beings, our world that we recognize, in which Poe lived in and wrote about so effectively. Poe's best stories deal with us. They deal with human beings, and I think the raven is sort of triggering these things in the student, as he's often called. So my answer to that is that the raven is, as it is sometimes called, I hate to say it, a dumb bird that is triggering all these associations in the student himself to explore the loss and the grief that he's feeling and what he's doing about it. So I think that's probably about as far as I'm going to go with my own interpretation of the raven. I think you all should interpret it for yourselves and what it means to you all. Do you have a particular interpretation yourself?
No, I don't. Oh. Thank you.
Sure. Anything else? All right, well, thank you very much. And we have a bonus today. Chris Zentner, who is, there he is. Chris Zentner is the longtime curator of the Poe Museum, and he has put together for this reading and also for the observance of the anniversary of Poe's death a show. He's going to show us some of the artifacts that he's pulled out for you. So I'll hand it over to Chris, and you can follow him. Right?
Okay, we'll be right over in the death room.
Don't be scared.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He tried. I sure tried.